Okay, today is Monday. It is 2:52 a.m. It is March 30th. In life, there is nothing like an incident that wakes me up. Okay? So I thought about this movie called Titanic, right? So when these people built it, they said, "Hey, it's indestructible." Okay? That's what they said. But they didn't test it right, okay? So all you had to do was scrape right across with an iceberg and it sunk, okay? Something that was indestructible, okay? But they didn't test it right. They didn't see the possibility of something like that happening. And so it woke them up, okay? So I find it personal to me how it is relatable to my life right now is this Friday. And this last Friday was a it's like it's like waking up and being broadsided by my wife saying, "Hey, I want a divorce." Right? It's like saying, "Hey, you. I have this paperwork. I want a divorce." And I thought everything was okay. I was in my own little world. Own little world where everything was perfect. A dream world where flowers fell from the skies and there were roses everywhere and and things were going so well, okay? There were little things, there were little thorny things that posed up, but it was hidden behind this perfect setting that I had imagined. And then all of a sudden that happened, right? It's a life-changing event. And this Friday is very similar to that. And so there are many instances like this. The Fridays that I've survived, I survived, and I just said, "Hey, it happens. Some things like that happen." The mind just goes wacko. I Who knows what happened? I'll leave it to God. But something like that does happen. It happens quite a bit. The last time I had, it took me months to get over it. It caused my mind to be in a state of total disarray for months. Okay, but this time around, I figured it out. It's easier to figure it out once I am exposed to this kind of situation, right? Multiple times, and so the people who built the Titanic after that incident probably did something about that particular thing, or they went out of business and they can't do anything about it, right? So what I noticed about so this particular situation has taught me something about uh, what I was doing on Friday, which led me to that situation. So I was trying to figure out, okay, so what caused my brain to be in that state? But it's not the brain that was the problem. Uh, the brain had some issues with it, but the core problem was I was chasing. Okay, I was chasing. That was my problem. I was chasing something that I should not have chased, and it cratered all the money that I had. Fortunately for me, I didn't have much money. Okay, I don't have much money, and so the loss is small. Okay, compared to what I will have in the future, right? And so what I noticed about this particular situation is I noticed in my trading strategy is if I deviate from the setup that I have, it's chasing. Okay, at any time, if I deviate from the setups that I'm used to, it's called chasing. I'm just chasing. I'm dreaming. I'm in a dream world. Okay? I'm projecting. I'm projecting and saying, "Hey, I want it to happen this way," but the market is doing something totally different. That's projection. That's projecting. That's projection. It's chasing. It's it's overlaying a dream scenario where I say, okay, the market is actually going this way, but I'm gonna put it this way, and I'm gonna hope and pray that it's gonna go up that way. Market doesn't do it that way. Okay, I fall victim to that. Okay, I can fall victim to that. I'm the one, but the market that doesn't. It is a it is an aggregate of the totality of the whole existence of the whole world and the universe, and it behaves completely different than somebody like me, who is a weak and frail, feeble-minded individual who's trying to make this thing work. Okay, so the reality of this situation. So what am I getting at? So I was chasing. I've noticed that I was chasing. I was trying to make it work. I was trying to fill it in. I was trying to fill in this need that I had. I had a void. I had a void that I had to fill in. I had to fill my pocket with something that day, and I was trying to force it. I was trying to chase it. I was trying to force the situation to arise. I'm raising my voice. I'm raising my tone. Okay, uh, but trading cannot happen that way. It cannot happen that way, and I realized this. Okay, and I careened out of control. Fortunately for me, I said to myself, "Hey, things do happen. Okay, it's out of my control, and things will happen. Okay, the idea is to limit the incidents that occurs. Okay, I can imagine. Okay, so when I can imagine when Tiger Woods, when he becomes becomes sober, okay, after that incident with this rollover in his Range Rover or whatever it is, a few days ago. Well, currently it's March 30th, but apparently like a day or two, yesterday or something like that. Apparently he was drunk or some an influence of some like mind altering kind of chemical in his system that caused him to veer into this chaotic situation where he was like hit another car or something like that. But whether he's gonna wake up from that is because he's done that. He's repeatedly done that, right? Okay, so whether he's gonna wake up from that is his problem. Okay, but sometimes people don't wake up from that situation. I, as a trader, have fallen into that same situation, same scenario, changing the behavior that blocks me from exposing myself to that situation. Okay, once I block myself from being exposed to that situation, it allows me to change my behavior and the outcome of whatever scenarios that are placed before me. Right. So what I noticed. Okay, so see, I thought I knew what I was going to talk about when I was making this video, but it's a good thing that I'm making the video. Okay. So what I noticed, so what am I getting about? What was I going to talk about? But I just detracted. Okay, so what I need to talk about is, okay, so how do I get 1%? Okay, so how do I get 1%? Okay, how do I get 1% now? I've already deduced. So they talk about this atomic habits and stuff like that. And if you're able to make 1% better about yourself by the time later on, I mean, it compounds and becomes astronomical, right? So now what I need to do is figure out, now, how am I going to get this 1% per day? Okay, how am I going to get that? And one thing I've noticed, I was chasing. I was chasing something. I was chasing. When I chase, the results don't look good. It always ends up bad. Okay, because chasing is exposing myself to a situation where the only outcome is just total destruction of the account. Okay, and now for me, it's time. I have to wait for it. Okay, I have to wait until I can afford another account. Okay, so that's the scenario, and I'm not getting any younger, and time is becoming more and more valuable. Okay, so Warren Buffett is close to like 100 years old, and I can the time that he has left is far more valuable now than the time that he had when he was young, because percentage wise it's less. It's a limited commodity. Okay, so okay, I thought I knew what I was going to talk about. I thought I knew. I thought I knew what this discussion was going to be about, but I seem to have forgotten. Okay, and I can't do that. Okay, so let's make it worthwhile. Okay, so how do I make it worthwhile? Okay, I already spent the time on this making this video. So how do I make it worthwhile? Okay, so how do I make it worthwhile? So I need to figure out how to make 1%. Okay, 1% per day is essentially about sticking to my setups. Okay, sticking to my setups and trading that setup and only that setup. When I do that, then I remove myself from chasing. Okay, I remove myself. I extricate myself from chasing. Okay, that's what I need to do. I need to, and it's hard to do because this I have this dreamy world where I think I imagine that everything is perfect, and when everything is perfect, even being homeless and living without a car, it becomes comfortable because I reason it out. Okay, because I don't see what's going to happen tomorrow. Okay, I don't see what's going to happen next week. I don't see what's going to happen next year, because at that moment, I'm content with what I have, and it's great. I can sleep. Okay, if I worried about what's going to happen 10 years from now, I won't be able to get a wink of sleep at all, right? So now the reality of this situation. Okay, so currently it's 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay, and I thank God that I have this opportunity to use the internet here. Otherwise, yeah, I'm thankful, and I'm thankful that I have a restaurant job that pays for this rent here, and then I mean, boy, it could be. See, I'm just rambling on here, rambling on for some reason. I thought I knew I was going to talk about, but that's the way it is. Okay, so I should really really um, I should really understand what. Well, that thing was way more than that, huh? Yeah, it was right there. So essentially, what happens is you can just literally get broadsided. Uh, you can literally get broadsided. So the idea is when certain situations, it's like me and a friend of mine who is going to Las Vegas when we were in college. Was it in college? I don't know if we were in college or not. Um, I had a Bronco, which meant that I was already employed, and I had the Bronco, and I bought the Bronco with employment, which meant that I would have graduated, and so we went there, and money was tight. Okay, money was tight, so we were there, and so while we were driving there, I veered off uh, because I fell asleep behind the steering wheel, and then the rocks on traveling at 60 miles an hour, 60 miles an hour woke me up, and then I had this, I but it really didn't wake me up that much. I was still groggy. It wasn't like the movie called The Vacation where Chevy Chase was driving in a highway, and then was he sleeping, or oh no, he wasn't sleeping. He was trying to like he was trying to get the attention of this model, right? And then he was on the wrong side of the highway, and this truck came by, and he had to veer off, and then the camera pans into his face, and his wife wakes up and says, "Hey, what happened?" And he goes, "Oh." so that's the situation. Okay, so there will be surprises. There will be things that happens that there are surprises that wakes you up. It just wakes you up. It just says wham, and uh, this incident is going to wake you up. Okay, it's going to wake you up. Okay, so now now what I need to do now, how is that related to that 1%? Okay, so what I noticed that if I'm chasing, okay, if I'm chasing, I I am literally throwing myself under the bus. Okay, that's what's happening. When I'm chasing, I'm literally placing myself underneath the bus and allowing the bus to run me over. Okay, that's what I'm doing. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to be tossed underneath a bus. Okay, and when I'm tossed underneath the bus, it can be obviously a very, very traumatic situation. Okay, and that's not the way that's contrary to what I need to do as a trader. As a trader, I have an objective, and that objective is to now I see it. Okay, now I see it. And many people, the professionals, talk about, now I'm starting to understand what they're talking about, fortunately. Okay, fortunately, I'm beginning to understand it now. I've broken down to the big problems into smaller problem. Now the small problem I need to solve. Okay, so what I noticed about uh, what I noticed about uh, solving for this small problem with the 1% pine kind of thing is now now what I need to do is figure out how to solve it. So how do I solve it? How do I solve this? How do I solve this 1% kind of thing? Okay, so 1% is not an easy thing to achieve. Okay, it's not. It takes it it's got to. It happens because of reasons. Okay, there are things that I need to do in order to make that happen. Now, what is that thing that I need to make that happen? Okay, that's the question. That's something that I need to solve. Okay, so so now I need to figure. Okay, so so this is a very, very important problem to solve. Okay, this is a very, 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 very important problem that I need to solve. It has to be solved. It has to be it has to be back tested, really. Okay, so how do I get 1%? Okay, so the idea is, how do I get 1%? I can get 1%. I can get 1%. The unknown is, okay, so how many trades do I need want to take in order to get 1%? Should I make the goal to be 1%? And is it possible for me to make more than 1%? So that's something that I need to think about. Okay, so I can make 1%. I can see it. I can see how that can happen. Okay, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be making 1% immediately, but I can make 1%. I've done it before with quite effective means. Okay, but chasing is leaving it to randomness of the market. Okay, and probably chasing makes the odds of acquiring 1% harder. Okay, because I'm not steering the solution in my direction. Okay, I have to steer the results in my direction in order to uh, make make it make that 1% happen statistically more probable than not probable. Okay, so it took me this long, more than 5 years of a full attention. Okay, granted that see the thing is, when you're like traumatized, okay, when you're traumatized like I have, okay, so here I am, okay, I took care of my parents, and then now I finally got a job through the help of the local church in Florida, and then I was there for a year or two, I think, and then I get into a wrangle with these two siblings who are, they have this murderous tendencies. Okay, they're not kidding around. They're really not. They're out for blood. Okay, they're not like joking around. They're very, very serious. They're out there to murder you. Okay, literally murder you. It's like in the Bible. The only thing that I can describe is in the Bible. All right, you got this the Old Testament, where I think his name is Joseph or something like that, and so was it Benjamin or something? Okay, so one of those. Apparently, these siblings were traveling, and then they decided to, because they were jealous of him, so they threw him down a hole and then sold him to the slave trader, essentially murdering him. Right? That's what happens. That's what that's what siblings. That's what they did to me. Right? And so I wake up one day after acquiring a house and estate to my fathers, and then they take me to the cleaners, and then add to it. Okay, I did all the work. Okay, and then now, because I was the only able-bodied person there, then I find out after losing every penny that I had to the civil guy who was like milking me every day. They were in it together to milk me, to take all the money that I had, drain me completely, and then go to the criminal court, and then in criminal court to then the prosecution say, hey, we're gonna get you for 50 years if you don't agree to this. We're going to put you in prison for 50 years if you don't sign this, right? And then one of the paperwork that says, okay, that the court provides me is this, okay, has anybody threatened your life? And I'm thinking, I don't know what to say. I really don't know what to say. Of course they did. They threatened my life, okay? So I had to agree. I had to agree with everything, okay? And these murderer siblings took everything, right? And so I wake up having a job, not having a job, facing something that I had no idea what was going to happen. Okay, and it was a life altering kind of a situation where, like, wow, it's right there. It's right there. It's happening. It's happening. And what happens to me psychologically is total numbness, despair, and utter vacancy of the mind. It creates a utter vacancy of the mind because my mind was incapable of processing what was happening to me at that moment, right? Those two, they knew what was happening. Okay, they had this murderous tendencies. They knew. Okay, but I had no idea what was happening. Okay, and so the reality is, and then I wake up to that and I'm going, whoa, what happened? What just happened? What is happening? Right? And so then I realized, so that's a wake-up call. Now, how is this related to the 1%? Okay? So the 1% is a wake-up call. The market is coming down and I'm like projecting and I'm trying to make this work, but it's not working. And I wake up like in the afternoon of Friday, totally being annihilated. Okay? It's totally being annihilated of my manhood, whatever it is, whatever the manhood that I had left over. Okay, I have been, I have been, I have been reduced to being a eunuch. But whatever the shred of manhood that I had was taken away this Friday. Okay, essentially erased. Okay. But it took that to finally transfer me over to this newfound discovery of what I need to do. Okay, so it reminds me of this. I don't know why, but it reminds me of this movie called "The Bad, the Good, and Ugly." Okay, so Clint Eastwood, uh, and I forget what his name is. And so Clint Eastwood was being was driven through the desert without water. Okay, because because these two had history together, and then this other guy wanted revenge, and so he wanted to drag him through the desert without any water. Then this is the Civil War kind of a situation. So the stagecoach briefly stopped. It had dead bodies in it, but one person was still alive. Okay, and this one person had something to say. Okay, he had something to say. Okay, he had one thing to say. So this other guy uh, caught up with the stagecoach and then started to listen to something. But the person who was almost dead needed water before he could finish what he was gonna say. Okay, so um, so he says water, right? Water, and so the guy goes up to the horse to get the water, but Clint Eastwood crawled over to him. Okay, before he died. Okay, and then the guy who was in the stagecoach dying told Clint Eastwood the second part of this mystery. Okay, so what happened is this. What happened is this. Okay, so each of them knew what the man in the stagecoach was what knew. Okay, he knew. Okay, they both knew that it was a buried gold coins. They both knew that, but they don't know which cemetery and plot of plot of cemetery it is. Okay, so they each knew. One of them knew the cemetery. The other one knew which plot of cemetery it is. Okay, Clint Eastwood knew the second part, and so now this guy is about to murder him, but now he's treating him well, like giving him water because he needed that information. Okay, so ultimately, what happened was they both get to the cemetery. Okay, so they knew what cemetery it is. The plot of the grave was marked. Okay, it was marked. Okay, and only Clint Eastwood knew which one it is because there were thousands. This was the days of the Civil War where people were like, I mean, the warfare was. I mean, it was like eyeball to eyeball kind of a warfare. Unlike these days where it's like you're off by a mile or two, right? And things are over uh, when a helicopter is sending a rocket 5 miles downstream, and then whatever results happens 5 mile upstream, it ends like that, right? And you got these Wi-Fi's or whatever happens is through fiber optics or whatever it is happening in a very far distant place, right? So ultimately, what's happening is that there's a grave called Rich Stanton. Okay, so Rich Stanton is the person there. Okay, in one grave. Okay, but What's missing is that. So this bad guy came over and says, dig too. But what they found out is that burial had Rich Stanton in it, no gold, right? And so the missing piece information is this. It's the plot right next to it called the unknown. Okay? It's written as unknown, okay? So when it's written as unknown, that's where the gold is. But before they see, there were three people there. Okay, there are three people. Okay, there are three people, but two people shared. Okay, two people shared it. Okay, the good guy, the good guy, was merciful. He was about to ride off after finishing off the bad guy, and then the ugly guy was like standing on top of the wooden cross, okay, with a noose around his neck, and he was about to slip and fall and then finally succumb, but he was merciful. Okay, he rode way out and he aimed his rifle and then snapped the noose from the tree, and his face bashed against the gold coins that were there, and then he made this ugly face. Okay, and Blondie started to ride off. Okay, the idea is that the grave right next to Rich Stanton. Okay, the Rich Stanton is the plot of land that was there, and then the plot of land that right next to it is uh, written as unknown. Okay, that's where the buried gold is. Okay, so essentially, the whole meaning behind this is this. Okay, the whole meaning behind this is this. So what I've noticed about trading is if I chase, I'll be digging a Rich Stanton's grave. But if I'm using the setups correctly and waiting for the proper moment to properly disclose what's happening, then I know uh, I know the burial plot where mounds of gold coins are. We're talking about, so most likely those two bags were like 50 pounds each, right, of gold coins, just purely on a melt value, 50 pounds with gold currently at about $5,000 per ounce, right? And what is that? 16 ounces is 1 pound, right? 16 ounce 16 ounce is 1 pound, right? So if I do quickly math, okay, so that's about 100 pounds, probably about 100. I mean, he was like straining when he was putting it on his horse. So just 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 say that it is like 100 pounds. Let's say that's 100 pounds, right? So if it's 100 pounds uh, times 16 ounces times $5,000, that's 8 million bucks. That's roughly about 8 million bucks in current value of gold. Okay, I say that's about 50 pounds. That's about a 50-pound bag. Yeah, that's about a 50-pound bag. So he had two bags. That's about 100 pounds. So he had $8 million in the satchels of it. It was There were four, actually. There were four. So there was like $16 million worth of gold buried uh, in the grave, labeled as unknown. Okay, so then I realized this now, and I've been chasing this. I've been chasing Rich Stanton for the past 5 years. I've been chasing Richard Stanton for 5 years, and then I get to the grave, and I realize that although my direction was incorrect, right next to it was the real gold that was there. And the real gold is a combination of acquiring the information, getting physically taking me across the bridge where the north and south was in conflict, and they had to blow the bridge so they can move to another location so that I can safely move into that graveyard uh, where I can take that gold. Okay, so it's the experience and it's the experience and the knowledge that I've acquired from that desert where I ran into that dying soldier who knew this secret, where the secret would have been buried with him, right? Where it would have been gone. And it was enlivened with a whisper in the desert of these two individuals who carried it over to that graveyard and then took that gold. Otherwise, it would have never been discovered. Okay, right? So, so the idea right now, to me, what I've discovered is that, firstly, what I've already discussed, and what I've already learned from trading is that there's that experience and the knowledge. Okay, and what sets it apart is this discovery this Friday, a continuation of understanding, is knowing that there is something called a uh, for me on a personal level. I'm trying to make it as grand as possible, because it is grand, because it boils down to trading. Okay, because what I tended to do was like aimlessly travel through the desert without using a pinpoint accuracy of a setup and expecting results to fall in line. And that can only happen if the market concedes on its own to align with my strategy, which is problematic because it builds habits that I'm expecting the market to be in alignment with me. But that's not something that's going to happen. Okay, it happens sometimes, but it's not going to happen on a consistent basis. And so what I have to do is be in alignment with the market. Being in alignment with the market is being able to identify the setups that I see. And that's why people talk about like ICT concepts and all that stuff, right? Because they're using a prescribed things that have been back tested that says on a certain level these conditions work the way that is being taught, okay? Because fundamentally speaking, what that is it is essentially a setup. It's not a chasing parameter where I'm looking at a candle and it moves in a certain direction and I'm expecting to go. What I'm failing to see is that there is a setup that is driving that movement, okay, to a certain conclusion, certain way, okay, and that golden ingredient, that unknown, the flavor du jour of trading is implementing that setup. That setup is so crucial. I missed it. I totally missed it this Friday. Okay. I was just chasing it. I'm looking at it. It didn't make any sense, but I still kept trading it. It brought me back to the memories of the past where I would be looking at myself and I would be clicking and it had to be. I lost 25%. 5 profit challenges, essentially. 4 of them that were paid. One of them was a free one, but still, nonetheless, is 5. And how could that happen? It only happens when I'm trading something. I'm chasing it. I'm seeing the volatility, but I'm not using my setups. And when I'm not using my setups and the proper sequence of things that I need to trade, then I will run into the situation where I will run into this situation, okay, and I will get into the situation. So that second part of that information, okay, the second part of that information, that unknown, is using that setup. I have to use that setup. Setup is so important. Setups are. I forget that setups are so important. I forget. I forget. Setups, stop loss, profit target. Okay, I need to watch. These are the things that I need to do. I need to look at my trade. Okay, because I'm essentially somewhere like I'm like an intraday trader, and so I have to look at it, and I have to make sure that I'm sized right. Okay, and I have to make sure that I have the setups right. Okay, and I have to make sure that I have my stop loss set up right. Otherwise, I'm gonna lose. It's obvious. It happened to be Friday. Okay, so right next to Rich Stanton, there is a thing called the grave is labeled as setup, the unknown. Okay, that's the unknown. It took me a long time to figure this out. Why am I doing this? Because I'm doing the demo. Okay, I have no risk in the market right now. I have no risk for the next few weeks, and and now I'm calm. I'm not like, so I can see that my mind is wrapped, encased in something when I have risk on. It totally is encased in some sort of like a it seems to be related to like addiction kind of a thing. It encases me. Uh, right? So the name of the grave is called the unknown. Okay, it's unknown, right? I hope it makes sense. Okay? Right now it doesn't make any sense to me, but hopefully it'll make some sense a little bit later.